the processor is running with the two modes. One is ARM mode, another one is the privileged mode, that is the system mode. ARM mode is user mode, the privileged is the protected mode. Okay. So by default, supposing you are in user mode and in case any exception occurs. So whenever an exception occurs, it goes to privilege mode through the handler. There is a handler, privilege handler, and it encounters that privilege state, that is privileged thread. So thread is nothing but a piece of code. So it executes that, and there is a here in the state diagram you notice from privileged thread it is coming back to the user thread. So we have got some specific instruction through which only you can come back. Okay. Otherwise, it is through the privilege handler and exception exit comes back to the user thread. So you need to understand the state transition very well. Then only you'll be able to get how the various instructions are executed in the different modes. Maybe to understand, yeah. So I have shown this diagram. You have a privileged and the user threads of execution. In privilege, you have a handler and the thread modes, and user you have only thread modes. One thing you need to remember that you cannot straight away go to the privileged thread. Okay, so it is done through the privilege handler, and you execute the whatever the it's in operating systems or the system level approach, system level execution. So from user execution, you cannot straight away go to the protected. You cannot access the memory of the protected. Okay, yeah. So the processor supports the nested vector interrupt. So there is a specific controller for which to handle the NVIC, nested vector interrupt. So it is same as your normal interrupt execution, but given with the set of specific registers and the various masking and how you can reduce the time taken for the execution of the interrupts. Because whenever you are handling with the various real-time applications, we need to see that it should support your determinism. That is, how good it is giving you the results with without exceeding the deadline. So this is possible provided you have limited with the interrupt latency, because you are handling with the various process execution through the interrupts. Okay, so there is a interrupt vectored interrupt. Vector interrupt in the sense you have the vector table wherein you give with the various address of the interrupts. So you go to the subroutine of interrupt service, process it, then come back to the from wherever you have exited. But here it is nested in the sense the interrupt calling another interrupt. It is something, some sort of a nesting will be there with the various interrupts. We also have a dynamic priority change. As I've already mentioned, the processor supports various priority for the interrupts, and while running, it is possible to change the priority. because when the processor is scheduling it, it look into the priority of the process which is supposed to execute. So the process which has got highest priority will take a chance for the execution, and if in runtime another process gets into the ready list, and if you find that if you want to change the priority of the process so that it gets a chance for the execution, runtime support will be there dynamically. You can change the priority of the process which is running. Okay, that is supported in the processor. Yeah, there is a nested vector interrupt support. So whenever an interrupt occurs, the controller compares the priority of the interrupt to the current running priority level. Okay, maybe this you are aware of it. So based on the various priority, you recall the process state diagram which I have shown. You have ready, running, and the blocked. So always the process which is running will be of the highest priority. The highest priority process will be running, and it could be an interrupt service routine or any instruction. So if the priority of a new interrupt is higher than the current level, there is an interrupt handler. Okay, it will override the current running task. Of course, the concept or the fundamental procedure through which the interrupts are executing is the same. You have how you handle with the simple function. Yeah, so this the vectored interrupt support, which is there is a vector table wherein you have address of the various interrupts. Okay, so you need not use a software to determine the starting address, because by default you have the set of address. It will be easier because through the controller itself you get the address of the starting address of the interrupt service routine. So it takes less time for the interrupt. And I've already mentioned about the dynamic priority changes. There is a support of changing the priority of the task or the process. So reduction of interrupt latency. So Cortex processor has features to lower the interrupt latency. So you can minimize the time taken, reducing the delay in switching. So as we know that, since I've explained you about the process creation and the process switching through some sort of a switching from one process to another process. So process is, let us say I am handling some interrupt instruction, interrupt set of function. So whenever I switch from one process to another process, consider I'm talking about any, it could be interrupt service routine or in general, any process. So whenever there is a switching from one process to another process, it has to save the information, that is context saving. So in the stack memory allotted for that process saves the information and then switches, because there is a delay in we have to save the information in the memory, then it has to switch. Obviously there will be a context saving and context switching time. Okay, so this in the particular process, this processor, there are some features which because of you have a controller, there is a hardware controller for the interrupt service execution, that is trying to minimize the time taken for switching one ISR to another. Then interrupt masking. So we can mask means hide for the time being. So there are some set of registers, special registers supported by the processor, like base priority, then primary mask, fault mask, etc. So these are used to ensure the time critical task can be finished on time without interrupting. Suppose if it is critical, if you find that it is critical, then make sure that they are given the highest priority by servicing that. So we are talking about the various features of the processor. So coming to the memory map. I hope you know what is a memory map. That is a listing of the memory space. So the whole memory, how it is going to divide. Maybe you have a code memory, stack memory, data memory, etc. It has a predefined memory map. So you have which will allow to support your built-in peripherals. So since I have just shown you the internal block diagram of the Cortex processor, it has got different peripherals like I2C, CAN, then timers, ADC, so many things, Ethernet. So you have all those peripherals supported and your high-speed memory, then memory interface. So there are many more peripherals existing in the processor. So the built-in peripherals. So you may have to have some a dedicated memory space for handling the different the peripherals. Here the most system features are accessible in your C program code. So and the predefined memory, see the whatever the memory map which we have, which is optimized for high speed. Okay. And you can go with the system on chip design. As I have mentioned, you will have some intellectual property. So maybe ARM people will give you the only the core, and you get the different peripherals to the different vendors and connect it through your the bus architecture, and for fast whichever application needs, maybe different application with different peripherals. I mean, if you feel that you need some specific peripherals to be added, there is a, I mean, you can integrate it and come out with your specific chip like your NXP, Philips, etc. So they are taking the rights for coming out with the proper chip. So when I say LPC 1768, the number which we are using, which is from the NXP semiconductors. Okay. Yeah, this is your memory map. You have you can see the memory space given, the code, SRAM, peripherals, external RAM, external device, system level. Okay, so these are the memories and the range of address shown for the different memories. And regarding the bus interface, you have code memory, system bus, and also private peripheral bus. So these are the different types of memory buses, system bus, and the peripheral bus. So the code memory region access is carried out on the code memory buses. You have I code, D code, instruction code, data code, whatever. And the system bus is used to access the memory and peripherals. Okay, so to access the memory and peripherals, you are using the system bus. This access static random access memory peripherals, external RAM, etc. And you have a private peripheral bus, which is used to access the part of the system level memory. So which is dedicated to your private peripherals, some sort of a debugging components. If possible, I'll try to show you the debugging support in today's class. Let me see based on the time. And the Cortex processor has a memory protection unit. Memory, it's an optional. So, which is used to have handling the various memory protection, etc. Okay, through your operating system kernel, you need to make sure that it is cannot be used in a straightforward method. Okay. Also, this is used to make memory regions read-only. Some of the memory I want to make it as read-only to prevent accidental erasing of the data, or to isolate memory regions between different tasks in multitasking systems. So we need to note it. Yeah, so this will help the systems more robust and reliable. Okay, so because of which we can make the system efficient. Regarding the instruction set, so we are not going to detail on the instruction set. The subject is not on the instructions, but we need to know that there is some instructions which makes, I just want to highlight why it is so efficient, because say as I mentioned, this processor is working with the 100 megahertz clock, and when you see the other low-end processor, compared to the others, so this is quite high. And whenever I say this is the particular clock of the processor, there is a hardware support. So the hardware and the software should work in hand. Then only you will be able to achieve any sort of an execution with any applications. Correct. So here the particular process, the Cortex processor, support different types of instructions. Maybe in microprocessor, you have studied ARM7 instructions. So most of them, the basic instructions types. Maybe if you recall, the ARM7 support the ARM instructions and the thumb instructions. There's ARM instructions. ARM instruction in the sense all are 32-bit instructions. Thumb instructions, it's a compressed version. That is 16-bit instructions. So wherever you feel I'm not utilizing the complete 32-bit, so it's a support, because you can save the memory through the thumb mode. You can switch through the CPSR, that is current program status register, to which you can switch and execute. There is a specific instruction used, branch exchange or something, through which you are switching to the thumb and coming back to your ARM mode. So there is a ARM instruction 32-bit, thumb instructions 16-bit. But in the Cortex M3, we have a thumb to instruction set. So what do you mean by thumb2 instruction. As I've just mentioned, thumb is 16-bit instructions support. You have most of the instructions like your the data transfer, data processing, flow control, etc. So major types you have in ARM as well as the thumb instructions. So thumb2 is something, as I just mentioned, I need to switch. Supposing I am running with the ARM instruction, that is a user mode with the ARM instructions, then I wish to go to thumb through your thumb switching. I am going to the thumb instruction execution. So you need to switch between the ARM and the thumb. So whenever there is a switching happens, definitely you delay involved with the saving some certain information, so that I need to come back to the normal execution or whatever. So from where I have switched, I need to save the information so that I can execute. So thumb2 means there's no need of switching between the ARM and the thumb. So the thumb instruction, which is embedded in the ARM instruction itself. Okay. So that is some speciality of this processor, so which will avoid switching between the ARM and the thumb. Okay, it's how it is going to execute that we shall see later. So, but for the timing, you just try to understand that there is no switching between no need of switching from ARM to thumb. That, I mean, it is no, I don't say it's no need of switching. It will minimize the delay in the switching. It will minimize the delay in switching because of thumb2 instruction set. Okay.
Ma'am, I have one.
Yeah.
Ma'am, as a developer, I will be developing my whole program in C or C++ language. So,
right.
So do I have the option to compile my code into either thumb or ARM or thumb2 instruction set?
Well, normally you write in C code, right? C programming.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So the final code which will be developed, like as a developer, do I have the control over it? Like I want my code in ARM state or thumb thumb2 instruction set, something like that.
So whenever you're writing with the processor, you'll be using the embedded C, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So you will be using some specific registers. As a developer, you need to use those specific special registers through which you can switch it. Have you studied some of the instructions?
Yes, ma'am.
In the ARM.
Yes, ma'am.
BLX.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So you may, if you want to go through, you can go through those instructions again. So there you will get to know how there is a switching happens between ARM to thumb.
But all these switching and all these kind of things, they will be in a assembly level language.
No. See, assembly in the sense, we will be using some special registers in assembly, the C language also. You will be using, it's because you're using what do you call some library here, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So there is a support of that. So whenever you write any embedded systems in the operating system level, we will not be using those. We're not bothered about it.
Okay.
But when you write the core level programming, you will be using those registers.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you get it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah. So this the instruction. I mean, yeah. I was talking about the instruction set. There is a thumb 2 support in the Cortex-M3 processor. So it is most powerful, which we have it in the particular processor. So as I've just mentioned here, there are two operation states, 32-bit ARM state and 16-bit thumb state. Though in the ARM state, instructions are 32-bit, thumb state instructions are of 16-bit. Okay, one thing you need to know that the thumb state does not have all the functionality of ARM instructions, which are needed, okay, for some specific type of operations. Yeah, this diagram shows how there is a switching happens in the regular ARM7 processor, not in the Cortex. So you have the 32-bit ARM state. Suppose if you are in thumb state, let us say I'm using this, I just mentioned branch with state exchange, BLX. You executing this instruction, you go to the ARM state and return branch exchange link register. It will return and you come back to the whatever main program in the thumb state. Maybe suppose if I'm in the ARM state, I go to the thumb state, and so you'll be using the specific instruction to go switch from ARM to thumb state. So the thumb 2 instruction set supports all processing requirements in one operation state. There is no need to switch between the two. There is no need to switch between the two. The Cortex-M3 does not support the ARM code. Even interrupts are now handled with the thumb state. So you have it is not the separate set of instructions. You have instructions, but it is hidden or embedded in the same. So because of which, so there is no state switching overhead, which saves both execution time and the instruction space. And there's no need to separate ARM code and thumb code source files, okay, making software development and maintenance easier. And it is easier to get best efficiency and performance. That is so that you can write the software, and there's no need to worry about switching code between the ARM and the thumb. Okay. So the code density, that you are minimizing the code density, everything. So both are, it's embedded in the same instruction encoding. Some of the powerful instructions supported by the processor, just highlighted over here, that is UFPX, the bit field extract, can insert clear instructions. Okay, you can insert some instruction, you can clear the instructions, which are so powerful instructions supported by the processor. So you have unsigned and signed divide instructions, and wait for event, wait for interrupts, send event. Okay. So these are the instructions are existing in the processor. And we can also move to special register from general purpose register and special to general purpose registers, MSR and MRS. So these instructions are also supported with the processor. So these are something which you don't find in the ARM7 instructions. So in ARM7 you must have seen we can load, store multiple registers. There's a multiply, long, multiply, etc. There are a set of instructions. Okay. So, but here we have some complex instruction support. Yeah, so this has got low power and high energy efficiency. So there is a low power, the power consumption is reduced by making use of sleep mode. various system, I mean, whichever you need, you can use other peripherals which you are currently not using, you can make it sleep. And also the low gate count and design techniques reduce circuit activities in the processor, which will allow active power to be reduced. Okay. So there is another, I mean, because of which you'll be able to reduce the power consumption. In addition, the Cortex M3 has high code density, which is lowered in the program size requirement because of the thumb support. And yeah, so you also have the processing task to be completed in a short time, and which can return to sleep modes, so that as soon as possible you can I mean the whatever the instruction you are using, you can use it, otherwise you can make it in the sleep, so that you can make less energy consumption, less power consumption. Yeah, these are some of the exceptions. I don't want to dictate these, but just overall, we have non-maskable interrupt, the fast interrupt, normal interrupt, IRQ, as you have seen in the ARM processor. You have a reset and different faults through which the exception occurs: bus fault, usage fault, debug, etc. An additional feature of the Cortex processor is wake up interrupt controller, so which will allow the whole processor to be powered down while processor states are retained. I mean, you can retain the processor state and the whole processor can go to power down mode. So the processor can be returned to active state almost immediately when the interrupt takes place. So through interrupt only you will be coming back to the normal. So which makes this processor ultra low power applications. And the debugging support. So the debugging hardware of Cortex M3 processor is based on the core site architecture. So unlike your traditional ARM processor, this does not have JTAG interface. Instead, a debug interface module is decoupled from the core. Okay. And the bus interface is called as debug access port. Okay. There is a DAP. Debug access port is used for debugging. Through this bus, external debuggers can access control registers to debug hardware as well as the system memory. So whenever the processor is running, through this debugger, you can, I mean, runtime, we can test whether that instruction is, I mean, you can check the instruction execution in debug. Normally there is you must have seen there is a single step support in a simulator, in a keel. You can give the breakpoint and check. So many, I mean, whenever this is needed, because whenever you write a lengthy code, you may want to check whether till here my code is proper, whether it is running. I can insert some breakpoints and through which I can check it. So that is debugging through breakpoints and single stepping, etc. So here there is that is about your the running about the instructions, but we may want to check the internal connectivity, the routing, and whether the pin connectivity, because few consider the architecture which I have shown. When I have a system on chip, there will be a various peripherals interconnected, and I need to ensure that the pins, I want to ensure, okay, this is the input given, I am expecting this output for every peripheral pin connectivity, and also through the various buses, your internal bus and the system bus, there will be so many activities, and I need to ensure the right one without any flaw it is running. So through the debug clock, I can check the instruction execution in the runtime. That feature is existing in the particular processor, the ARM processor. So in ARM7, we have a on-chip debugger, that is why ARM7 TDMI. D stands for debug. There is an on-chip debugger, through which you can check it. So have you studied about the JTAG features? Hello?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So I think before I proceed because if I go on about some complex thing, let us see some the basic structure of JTAG. Then I'll come back to this. Give me a minute. Yeah, can you see this the slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, this is just to show the chip and circuit board debug, that is through the JTAG. JTAG stands for Joint Test Action Group. Okay. So initially it was developed by some student group, and that is where they have given the name as Joint Test Action Group. And later it was standardized. Now it is given IEEE standard. This was designed mainly thinking in the direction that how do I debug the trace connectivity for tracing the internal connections, everything. Not only that, we need to ensure that the instructions are executing in the right manner. So this is just the background, how the embedded systems are explored. Means now we are talking about you go with the smaller and smaller area with the many more features. The hardware became so complex in the sense the VLSI technology, because of the advancement in the VLSI technology, we are having so many layers. Anyway, I have not gone through how the VLSI they develop, but I know that the various technology are available through which you are having some sort of a stacking. Okay? So because of which we are able to come out with the smaller area with the many more features. Okay. So if you look at your mobile, the one which is shown over here, the size has gone down, and the other features have extended like anything. Your perform and you went on added with earlier it was only for talking. Now you have many more multimedia applications, right? Yeah, so we need to have some sort of a feature through which I need to debug it. Okay. So this is your how there will be a mass production. So now we need to test in a bulk. There are so many chips, and how do I trace those? How do I need to, we need to check the various problems if there is. So suppose if a chip fails in a product, how do I find which part is failed? So we need to know that which part is failed. Earlier, when we used to develop, like through your probe, right? You need to check. Suppose I have a PCB connections. Connect one multimeter and check it. Okay. So through which whether there is any continuity. So if there is no, that means in between there must have the wire broken or something. We'll come to know there is no continuity in the connections. But when your chip size is reduced like anything, is it possible to check through your simple probes? It is impossible. So there will be and also, yeah, this is to show that during your product development also, how to debug, how to observe the code. So I've just mentioned about simple simulation environment, how we be able to debug. So there are so many problems to which, how do we see inside a chip? Can see traces, detect breaks, used for inspections. In a simple circuit, we can make it, but within the chip, when they have connected with many more other peripherals, how to test the functionality, non-break failures. Okay, so those things are the challenge. So how to see inside the chip? Pins getting smaller and smaller, pins underneath the chips. So there is a lots of pins. Okay, how do I find out the connection faults, etc. within the chip? So to support that, there is a sort of a boundary scanning. So the boundary scanning, through which you will be able to debug. You can read voltage from other pins or circuitry inside the chip through the debug pins. There are some debug pins. When turned on in debug mode, when turned off, which operates normally. Which you call it as a boundary scanning. So the ARM processors support this debug. So JTAG is the one came out to handle all the problems which I have highlighted just now. So this is Joint Test Action Group, and having IEEE standard as 1149.1 with the standard test access port, that's a TAP, and boundary scan architecture. There's a software and the hardware, TAP controller and the port, which you call it as a test access port. So the standard JTAG interface looks like, the various pins of JTAG port are test data in, TDI, test data out, TDO, test clock, and test mode select. So you have, these are the standard pins which you have in the TAP, connected through the TAP. Which I am sending any data for testing through the test data in, and they are passed through your scan registers. This is support of scan register. So they will scan it through within the scan cells, and I get back through the TDO. But when I receive this scan data, it is also possible to know what was there earlier. So there are some set of instruction support. Simply whether I want to retain the existing one or I want to modify. So there are so many instruction sets supported by the JTAG. And these scan data are given through your test clock, and we can set different modes through the test mode select. Okay. Yeah, this is your simple structure of JTAG. Yeah, so you have a test reset, which will initialize the test interface, and you have test clock, test mode select, test data in, test data out, just I mentioned. So whenever I have a multi-chip, there are so many chips, so I can communicate or connect it to TDI or to another TDI so that I can pass on the scan data to the different. This is, I have shown only these two devices. You can have many more. So the same scan data can be sent in a bulk. Yeah, this is your the detailed hard structure shown. You have state machine, okay, so through which you get to know what are the different activities and the connections you will be sending through your TDI through the register, and there is a mux. It will decide from which you got the data, and it will pass on to the various scan registers, and you can get it back through your TDO. So if you find that they are normal, okay, fine. Otherwise, you can modify it. There is a bypass register, instruction register. Okay. So these are the and you have the flash memory. This is just the detail, the JTAG chip. Okay. Yeah, you can shift in and out 1 bit at a time. You are shifting bit by bit. So you can buffer it, the slow buffer bits from JTAG instruction, execute the JTAG instruction, and there are some default instructions like bypass. Bypass in the sense I just want to bypass. Whatever the data you send, I just scan it through and get it out. And you have a sample, preload, ID code, in test. So in test is to run internally hold pins, clamp, run built-in self-test. Okay. And you have dual use of some pins for more debugging options. So on a development mode, you have a JTAG port. Maybe the one which we have, the evaluation board, we have JTAG port. Okay. But within your this one chip, we don't have that JTAG, the Cortex M3 processor. But the evaluation board with one which we are using, it is for dual one, in the sense by just changing the what do you call sister board, I can use it for ARM7 or ARM Cortex. Okay, that is the one which we have with that support. Yeah. So in the evaluation board, it looks like with there is a JTAG board. Yeah, this is the header on the product, how it looks like. So you have some through holes also you can. Yeah, so this is just to show the non-level, non-processor chips and how you can handle the interface, but high-level IDE for the processor programming and debugging. Maybe you are aware of it, how you can debug it. Each register you can check. Okay, so the various functions, I can trace it. Yeah, this IEEE 1149.1, the boundary scan, it supports board testing and you can check the boundary scan, scan the scan chain control, etc. This is your the block diagram of boundary scan architecture. So I've just mentioned you have got the various pins through which you are checking, like TDI. If I have to just bypass the bypass register, straight away you get it through the TDO. Otherwise, you send it through by enabling it to the various the pins. If you look at this, there is a core logic, and you pass on through the various scan cells and get the data out through the TDO. So that input and output shows your the peripheral pins, if you have input pins and the output pins through which you are sending some scan data, and make sure that, suppose I am already given with some input 1 and I am expecting output as 0. So I can read the data out which was there in the cells, and after reading, if I feel that okay, if it is giving me 1 as an output for the one which I am expecting 0, immediately I can modify it. Okay, I can save in the cell. Yeah. So you have a device ID, because there are so many devices, you need to give some specific ID for the device, which is given through the device ID register, and you have an instruction register. So the data registers so the behavior of any chip is determined by the contents of the test instruction register. So which can be selected through different data registers. Device ID registers reads out an identification number, so which is hard coded for the particular chip. And you have a bypass register, as I mentioned. Simply you can, because if there are multiple chips and if you want to pass on some data, you just scan it and you get it through the bypass. And you have boundary scan registers, which intercepts all the signals between the core logic and the pins. So what is the actual core logic which you are given, and what is the pin logic? Okay, so and you can get it through the particular register out, TDO. Yeah, so this is how you do the pad and parametric test. I just give sample one example. So you can see that there is a chip core, and you have the various components. There's a tap controller. They are connected through this. Yeah, so this is your boundary scan architecture. You can see here the outer boundary one through which I'm reading. Those are the scan cells. So these are the actual core logic which we have. So you have the various bypass registers, instruction register, etc. So the data which you want to scan it, okay, so give it through the TDI, and you can read it through the various test access port, the data registers, capture registers. So what I mean here, we have a specific state machine through which we can check. I'm going to show you. So this is a state machine anyway. I'll not elaborate on this. I want to show you, yeah, this bypass. Yeah. So this is a mandatory instruction. Let me explain only one of that. So others, I don't want to. So this is a bypass instruction. It's a mandatory instruction, which the default instruction for this test access port with no ID code. It doesn't have. So you just, as I mentioned, bit by bit, you send it through TDI and TDO without modifying. So this is usually loaded in chips that are idle, which they are not doing anything, while other chips on the board are being tested. Okay, so means there are so many chips. I don't want to. I want to test a specific chip, but this scan data has to pass through all those. So in such a case, we just bypass that. Yeah, this is your bypass data path. I hope you know what is data path, through which the data, yeah. So TDI, bypass register, and you straight away get it through TDO. This is a bypass data path. I will not do anything. Okay. So let me show you the state diagram for bypass. One second. Reload, shift, reset. Date is there. Give me a minute. So it is having update bypass. Anyway, bypass won't do anything. Let me explain you. If I find, I'll show you. I'll show you the update one. Yeah. Say, okay. So this is, so that's this state diagram having certain steps involved here. If you look at this, I have a data registers and the instruction register. Okay, so data register and the instruction register. So through which whatever the scan cells you are passing on, you need to shift. I think you will be able to understand. Yeah, suppose I have this tap controller, and this is your chip given with the various scan cells, and the one which is shown with the greens are the available data, let us say. So 1010, 101, 0101, something like that. So you give a specific mode of the operation, and now, yeah, I can get it what was available in the core logic in the scan cells by shifting. That is a shift. Okay, so you can get it, and so through the you capture it and shift it to the register, and if you find it, this is the state diagram. It says you get all those things, and you can update. So let me go back and show you. Say I read those logic. I'm going to get the logic what was there and read it, and if I want to modify onto the core logic, I can, because I'm sending these data through the TDI, So TDI, I'm sending the new set of data, and what was there in the particular core logic, I can read it along with that, and say I want to modify the core logic, I can update it, I can modify it. Say for example, I am passing on, maybe in this figure you may not be able to get it. Say for example, I am sending some data, scan data, chains 1010. So 1010, and here I am getting for the output 0101, let us say. So the input as 1010. Wherever the input is 1, output is 0. Say I am sending through that. But initially, say you have different logic which was available in the core. But when you, with so many clocks, so many clock ticks, you read what was available in the core logic, because it is passed on through the shift register and get it through the scan cells to your TDO. When you read out, when you read those logic which was earlier it was there, and if you feel that okay, which need to be modified, you can update through the, because you can fix it. You can fix it through the shift register onto the core logic. So this is, it looks simple with some 3-4 scan cells, but in realistic it is so complex. There will be so many. So this is update instruction register, update data registers. You have different types of instructions. Okay, I will not. Yeah, so we were talking about the different instructions available in the JTAG, and this is your the data path shown. So you will be sending through the TDI, and the scan cells, a single scan cell, if you want to see how exactly looks like the internal scan cells, there is one, the white paper. Those who are interested, I'll upload in the Teams, so you can go through it. So there you can see how exactly the JTAG is used in debugging in the ARM processor, ARM7 exclusively, for ARM7 JTAG support. So there is a boundary scan register. I just summarize. There's a boundary scan register. you send certain set of data. This is mainly for the one which I have discussed, only to trace the pin logic, the pin connectivity and the pin logic, not about checking through, because any instruction, any logic or anything, it is in the binary patterns, so we can trace what exactly the data available in the core. So to read out those values, you pass on through the set of scan chains through your particular pin, and there are different modes of mode setting through which you can set the various modes of operations, and you read the data what was there in your pin logic, and once you read those, if you feel there is a modification is needed, you can modify your instruction, I mean the pin logic or the instructions, anything, so which is possible through your the scan cells, the scan chains, through the scan chains. There is a number of scan cells are there on the periphery of your core and periphery of your memory interface, etc. Okay, so the entire architecture, if you want to go through, can refer that material, wherein you will get a better idea about how the different instructions are used in the JTAG debugging. Okay. Yeah. I'll come back. So I just wanted to tell you about the JTAG. The JTAG, what is meaning by JTAG? Just looking at the pin connectivity, you may not be able to understand, but the main features of JTAG, I hope you got. So what are the main signals or the pins used in the port? What are the control signals used? And maybe today I couldn't add the features of the internal scan cells. Maybe in the next class I'll try to accommodate that. With that, you will be able to understand better how the scan cells are used to execute, I mean, to trace the internal features or the internal periphery of the core logic. Okay. Yeah, I hope you got what is a JTAG and what are the benefits of JTAG. I mean, you should be able to appreciate the reason for going for reason to go for, I mean, for JTAG debugging. Yeah, so in ARM, the ARM keel, there is a Ulink debugger, which we don't have in our department, but through this, you will be able to, if you connect through this, you'll be able to debug in runtime. Maybe you have used keel programming. In keel programming, whenever I download any code, I use it through the FlashMagick, through FlashMagick, which is a device driver for serial, through which I am dumping whatever the hex code onto the board. So after dumping the code onto the board, I want to debug on runtime. So how these instructions are executed. So which can be done through this Ulink debugger. It looks like this. When I connect through your debug port, you'll be able to check the different instructions on runtime. Okay, So let us summarize. The Cortex processor delivers high performance in microcontroller products, and there is a thumb2 support, because of which high speed execution is possible. And one more thing, the instruction fetches are 32-bit. Up to 2 instructions can be fetched in one cycle. Means you can fetch 64-bit, which is possible to fetch it. So maybe in AMBA architecture, you will get to know about the various features of, there are 2 types of buses, system bus and peripheral bus. There is a high performance bus as well. That high performance bus means I cannot have both your system bus or the high performance. So high performance bus is the one which is similar to your system bus, with having some additional features of fetching 64-bit. I can access 2 instruction at a time. Yeah. So the operating speed of the processor is 100 megahertz. Yeah. Then you have advanced interrupt handling features, which nested vector interrupt support. You have 240 external interrupt inputs. You have software interrupts, IRQs. And one more thing is, in addition, there is no need to have software code to set up nested interrupt support if we have a controller. And the Cortex processor automatically pushes your registers, link register, PSR and PC in the stack interrupt entry and pops them back at interrupt exit. When you enter and exit, it will push automatically. And yeah, there are some many more other features. You load multiple, store multiple, push pop. So you have gone through these instructions, which we have seen in the ARM7 processor, how you will be able to load multiple registers with the different types of addressing modes. Low power consumption, to support which we have sleeping, deep sleep modes, etc. And you have various clocking and yeah, for debug support, I have just mentioned about JTAG or serial wire debug interface, and you have built-in support for 6 breakpoints and 4 watch points. So you'll be able to understand what is breakpoints and 4 watch points only when you go through more detail about the boundary scan architecture. We have optional the ETM for instruction trace, external trace machine, instruction trace and data trace using the trace. Yeah, so you can refer this book, which I have already uploaded in the Teams, which is Definitive Guide to ARM Cortex M3 by Stellaris. So if you have got any doubts of today's, please ask. Otherwise, I'll stop. So we've seen the ARM Cortex and how powerful it is by looking at the various features of the processor. So different, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to ask. Yes, wanted to ask if we need to know how JTAG works in complete detail, including the block diagrams and all that.
I will I will upload one material which is quite so many pages are there. It's not in the point of view of examination, but if you want to know about more detail, you can go through it.
Okay, ma'am. We're basically going through the M3 so that we can better understand how to use it with the RTOS, right?
I didn't get you what you were talking.
I wanted to ask why are we going through the M3's design so that we can run the RTOS better, right?
No. This I have discussed because the board which I'm using the Cortex M3 processor, right? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So without appreciating the actual architecture of it, there's no point in running, because in the next class I'll be discussing on the UART. So whenever I write any code, your RTOS code, the code will be written on your debug, I mean in IDE, the key IDE, then I'll dump it right on the board. So the board which I'm using Cortex, and I'm sending through the serial, I mean through your UART, through the debug, I mean the flash magic, and maybe I want to pop some of the messages in between. So I need to know the internal structure as well. And I need to appreciate, okay, how I'll be able to know the internal clocking and the rest of the thing. That is the reason I have just given this.
Understood, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything? Okay, so we shall stop. I'll see the timetable of when the quiz is and when we are supposed to take up the quiz of this particular course. Then I'll schedule as per that. Please go through the topics, whatever I have taken till today for the quiz. Maybe excluding the JTAG, because JTAG I have just mentioned to know about the debug support. Fine?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So we'll leave. Okay then, bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.